Hello and welcome to this week's edition of TRP News. I'm your host, James Andre, and I want to thank you for joining me this week. This week we are going to be talking about Loretta Lynch, Comcast, Yemen, the refugee problem that I've been promising to get to, and of course the hot topic in the news, Trans-Pacific Partnership. So that's going to be a big one. And so let's jump right in and get to it. First up, Loretta Lynch. After an agreement finally reached on the sex trafficking bill this past week, Loretta Lynch was confirmed as Attorney General of the United States of America. 5 months since her nomination, she's finally confirmed on a 56-43 vote in the Senate. Lynch will be the first black woman to head the U.S. Attorney's Office. And it seems pretty clear that growing outrage over the delay of her confirmation got to Republicans. One GOP Senate aide told the National Review Lynch's race and sex did have an impact on her nomination. Quote, "If she were white, I think it would have been more difficult to find the 5 votes needed to be confirmed," the aide told National Review. So yes, it was turning into a race issue as well as an obstruction issue, as well as another just plain old obstructionist Republican action. And the threats from Harry Reid and the noise from left and Loretta Lynch supporters sort of seem to break the blockade. So now Loretta Lynch is Attorney General of the United States of America, and we can move on. So next up this week also, last Thursday, Comcast announced that they would no longer be pursuing a merger with Time Warner Cable. Last Friday they announced it, and it puts an end to a potential $45 billion deal between the nation's 2 largest cable companies. Officials at the Justice Department, Antitrust Division, and the FCC made it clear that there would not be a smooth path forward. They were concerned about the monopoly and service, and they said that they were not inclined to accept this deal, so Comcast dropped it. The deal would have given Comcast 30% of the cable and satellite TV market and 57% of the nation's broadband internet market. 57%. Comcast, voted the worst company in America last year, said they would move on. Meanwhile, rumor has it that Charter Communications may now attempt to acquire Time Warner, and Time Warner itself may attempt to make some sort of acquisition. We don't know what yet. But as it stands now, no more Comcast-Time Warner merger in the works, and you can thank the Justice Department and the FCC and all the various organizations and the public who said no to this terrible, terrible idea. Next up, I talked to you last week about what was going on in Yemen. So after the report last week, Saudi Arabia announced a scale back of their month-long bombing campaign in Yemen. Well, that end of that air campaign lasted a matter of days, and bombs were again dropped in rebel-held capital Sana'a, Yemen, as well as several other provinces. So I think they announced the scale back. It was literally the beginning of last week, and by Sunday they were dropping bombs again. A senior Yemeni official said that the bombing had not ended, and, quote, "there will be no deal with the Houthis whatsoever until they withdraw from areas under their control." According to the UN, over 1,000 people have been killed, half of which were civilians. Some sources are putting the number at triple that. In the Gulf of Aden, a potential showdown between U.S. naval forces and Iranian ships was averted when the Iranian ships turned back for Iran. As I told you last week, the U.S. is running interdiction. We do have military personnel and military companies, fleets, their ships, and they are running interdiction there and trying to ensure that weapons are not brought in other than U.S. weapons and Saudi Arabian weapons, I guess. And there was some concern. I think upwards of 9 Iranian ships were headed for Yemen, and apparently now, as we speak, they are still underway on their way back to Iran. Now, we told you last week also about the advance of Al-Qaeda in Yemen, the group having taken over a seaport, a town with a seaport, an airport, a central bank, and a military base, which had heavy weaponry. This week, ISIS now has released a video this past week saying that they are also in Yemen. They released, I think it's a 9-minute video showing about 18 fighters saying they are there to participate in the battle. And, so there's another spread. Now we have Al-Qaeda spreading and ISIS spreading even further. Remember that the Saudis are fighting the Houthi rebels, who are a Shiite Muslim-oriented group. Iran supports various Shiite factions around the world, including the Houthis, while ISIS and Al-Qaeda are Sunni-oriented and view Shiites as adversaries. So ISIS and Al-Qaeda are fighting the Houthi rebels in Yemen alongside Saudi Arabia, who is also fighting the Houthi rebels in order to reinstate their deposed and exiled president that they consider an ally, and the hand-picked president, Hadi, who is in Saudi Arabia at this time, and they are trying to return to power. So now we have the Houthi rebels, we have Saudi Arabia, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda trying to drive the Houthi rebels out, and Saudi Arabia trying to reinstall Hadi. And also we have Houthi officials claiming that Saudi Arabia is bringing these terrorists to Yemen and coordinating with them. So I don't know how true that is, but it's kind of odd that no one's saying anything about the spread of Al-Qaeda, about Al-Qaeda taking over a military base, and now ISIS is suddenly there. Perhaps where there's smoke, there's fire. Other than the ISIS video, this is another thing, other than the ISIS video this past week, it has been radio silence in the press and from the government when it comes to the spread of Al-Qaeda and ISIS as a result of the conflict in Yemen. So no one's saying anything. I think I reported this, this was in the news a little bit last week, and I reported on it. But as far as this week, not a word. No one's saying anything. The only reason that ISIS is in the news is because of the video. So apparently you need a publicist if you're a terrorist for people to notice your military actions. And of course, in terms of ISIS other actions, again, seems to have slipped out of the news. We will see what happens. We'll stay on top of the story and keep you updated. All right, and I've been promising for weeks to get to this issue, the subject of the global refugee crisis. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. It's a huge, huge problem. It's something that I'll probably spend more time on. And, we have a lot to talk about at the end of this episode. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview and update of what's happening. This is another thing you don't hear a lot about, and sort of another issue that kind of slips out of the news until there's a major event. And that's exactly what happened this week. You probably have heard about the disaster in the Mediterranean. Somewhere around 900 people have died trying to cross from Libya to Greece or Italy. And they overloaded a boat and it capsized. And so far, I think only out of that boat, where estimated 900 people are on, only 25 have been recovered alive. So the number of migrants on smuggling boats has risen sharply, with more than 11,000 people being rescued during the first 17 days of April. 11,000 people in 17 days. Okay, so Italy was taking the brunt of this in terms of doing the sea rescue and trying to recover these people and make sure they didn't die trying to cross in these overloaded boats in these bad situations. But they scaled back their program. No one else was really putting much effort. None of the other European countries were really putting much effort into trying to assist them and footing the bill, the expense. And, obviously these immigrants are coming from North Africa, so they are trying to get out of there, so they're not much help in dealing with this situation. Now, some are suggesting, put some camps there, refugee camps, to help these people out. But a lot of these states are politically unstable, and so this is just one spot, too. This is just one spot, and what happens to be in the news in this past week. 11,000 people in the first 17 days of this month. And globally, this is reportedly the largest pool of refugees worldwide, asylum seekers and internally displaced persons since World War II. So internally displaced means that you were forced to leave your home. Armed conflict came to your block. You had to run away. You don't really have anywhere to go. You're still in your country, but you don't have a home. You don't have a place to stay. So, largest pool of refugees since World War II. The number of persons forcibly removed from their homes worldwide last year reached 51.2 million. 51.2 million. So it's a staggering number, and these people are not having an easy time of it. This is some of the repercussions of armed conflict, of warfare, of these bombing campaigns like Saudi Arabia's undertaking in Yemen, is that, there are civilians in these places. There are people, non-combatants, people who just happen to be living there while other people decide to fight over power and territory. So people are being forced out of their homes, and others trying to leave their countries, like the Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, South Sudan, and Nigeria. 3.8 million Syrians have fled to Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt, according to the United Nations Refugee Organization, UNHCR, while another 7.6 million Syrians are displaced inside the country. Remember Syria? Well, that war is still going on. And some are saying that Bashar Assad may in fact be coming to an end of his control and his political rule. But meanwhile, there's warfare going on. President Obama got rid of the chemical weapons in Syria, but the conflict itself continues. And just like Yemen, we have a variety of actors going in there and participating in the conflict. And we have a large number of civilians just trying to save their own skins. So 1.8 million Iraqis were also displaced last year by violence triggered by the Sunni militancy there, the Sunni military uprising, I guess you would call it, where they began mistreating their Shia neighbors and Shia co-civilians. So 1.8 million Iraqis had to try to run from that. The UN Refugee Agency is making plans this year to receive 100,000 Yemenis in Somalia and 30,000 in Djibouti in the next 6 months. So now, to tell you how bad this is a reversal. Following the 1991 political collapse in Somalia, 250,000 Somalians went to Yemen. So now people are coming back, and Yemen is preparing to take them. They say that Yemen helped them when they needed help, and so now Somalia will help Yemen while they need help. Unfortunately, one of the big concerns about that is you have these millions and millions of people migrating desperately under shady circumstances, sometimes under treacherous conditions and dark of night, and sometimes being smuggled. So this is basically also contains a component of human trafficking. And the concern is that this is an easy way for criminals and terrorists to travel. So you go to Yemen, you leave Somalia, go to Yemen, you become radicalized by ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and you come back to Somalia, which has its own issues with Al-Shabaab causing terror and chaos in their country. So this is a way that these people are traveling, these terrorists are traveling, and they're traveling with these people who are just trying to survive and escape armed conflict and save their lives. So, however glad to be alive and avoid death in a war zone, many risk treacherous travel only to face difficult living conditions in makeshift camps. So refugees, for example, from Darfur are still living in camps. Remember Darfur? That was a huge humanitarian crisis. Still is a huge humanitarian crisis. Concert for Darfur, donate to Darfur, help Darfur. Well, these people are still suffering. They're still living in refugee camps. They're still having problems coming out of Somalia. 250,000 people, and I'm putting up these pictures. You can see these camps as I talk. 250,000 people living in a camp. Refugees from Darfur, 250,000. And when I say camp, it's a camp. People are living in tents. People are living basically in the middle of nothing in tents. They're reliant on donations of water and food, and sanitation is an issue in a lot of these camps. So 250,000 people just in that camp from Darfur from years ago at this point. Syrian refugees in Jordan in the Zaatari camp, over 100,000. 100,000. In northeastern Kenya in Dadaab, over 400,000 Somalis fleeing their country. One camp, 400,000 people. Okay, so this is the scope of the refugee problem. The price of war is not only death and money, but disrupted and shattered lives of people who happen to be in the path of conflict. So their dangerous and difficult journey and living situation of those merely trying to preserve their lives is made worse by the politics of immigration, xenophobia, and racism. Okay, so a lot of these people are dark-skinned. A lot of these people are not Christian. They are Muslim, and and a lot of these countries do not want to deal with them. A lot of these countries even have laws preventing them. All the way to Israel, telling Africans to go home, and these are people who are actually citizens. France, they don't want them. So this is a huge problem, and Italy was trying to save them, but even they don't want the immigration. And immigration is a political football, as we know from this country. I think someone came out, I can't remember what right-wing crazy it was, Rand Paul or Paul Ryan, coming out against legal immigration. They don't even want legal immigrants coming to this country. Well, legal immigration is important to any country, and so that's just crazy talk. So it just goes to show you what a political football becomes. Meanwhile, these people are suffering. They're living in difficult conditions. They're traveling under difficult and dangerous circumstances. They're being smuggled. They're often giving away their life savings to unscrupulous and sort of amoral people who don't care. I think in this boat in the Mediterranean, they basically locked something like 300 or 400 people in the hold of the boat so that they would not climb up. And I guess it was sort of a security measure to prevent capsizing. It didn't work, but those people were trapped in the hold when the boat sank. What a horrible way to go. And this is what these people are willing to go through to try to escape the terrible conditions where they live. And often those doing the most to help those in need are those with the least resources to provide. So, of course, we talked about Somalia taking in the Yemenis, but Somalia itself is unstable in dealing with Al-Shabaab. So Italy was doing what it can in terms of sea rescue, but even they cut back their program. So we have a huge amount of wealth huge amount of trade in that area, yet we can't do anything with these refugees. And not only that, we can seem to do little to control the eruption of military conflict. We talk about the war on terror, yet we've got ISIS spreading in Yemen, we've got ISIS spreading in Iraq, we've got Al-Qaeda resurging in Yemen, Al-Qaeda resurgent in Northeast Africa, we've got Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda affiliated terrorist organization in Somalia, we've got that other gang that was kidnapping girls, schoolgirls. So this is a really serious problem. A lot of these countries are destabilized. A lot of this is a unfortunate legacy of the death of colonialism in a lot of these countries, and the death of the effects of British and U.S. control of a lot of these areas. Not only that, French and Belgian. So the consequences of armed conflict ripple for miles and for decades, and for some people it's just never ending. So this is a huge issue. It's an important humanitarian issue. We can't go from one crisis to another. We have to figure out a way to handle these situations, not only refugees, but how to handle armed conflict and protect innocent people and non-combatants. And it's not just armed conflict. As you may have heard also, we had an earthquake in Nepal, and we have refugees coming out of there. So natural disasters can cause migration of people. There's no resources, no town's completely destroyed. Where do you go? So this is an issue that needs to be addressed. The UN needs to do more. Angelina Jolie was just at the UN basically scolding them for their inaction, and I agree 100%. We should not be allowing these circumstances to continue. We should not be allowing, with all the area in the world and all the land and all the resources, these people should not be living in tents in the desert, relying on the UN to truck in water and truck in grain, rice, flour, and it's just a terrible, terrible situation. So I'll be keeping you updated on the refugee issue and what's happening intermittently, but I just wanted to bring that up because I've been talking about these armed conflicts as far as ISIS and Yemen, and it's an important issue, and it's something that people need to be aware of, and not just when a Darfur happens or not just when schoolgirls get kidnapped, but this is an ongoing issue since World War II and before. This is millions and millions of people, over 50 million being displaced currently. That's just currently 50 million people. Okay, and finally this week I want to talk to you about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Forgive me, but this is going to be a little bit of a long segment, so forgive me if it gets a little dry, a little technical, but I just want to go through everything point by point. I've been debating how much to talk about this, and so I'm going to give it a lot of time this week, and this is probably going to be the last time I go in depth on this. I've been discussing this with people, debating it, I've been researching it, and I've just come to the conclusion that some people just simply will not listen to any facts about this. They just have their idea in their head about what it's all about, and that's what they're going with. We have some loud voices on the left screaming about it, although I have come to believe that there is a sort of division amongst the opposition. There are liberals, there may be some libertarians, some blue-collar conservatives, so it's a variety of people, not just liberals that are against this trade deal, but a very common denominator amongst the critics is a lack of facts, lack of understanding of what's happening, and a lot of false attributions, and frankly, it's just, as I've said before, and I still believe firmly that a lot of the criticism about the Trans-Pacific Partnership is completely misguided and overblown. And I think as liberals, we are doing ourselves a disservice by just screaming no, and I feel like a lot of us are adopting the mentality of the right wing and just knee-jerk opposition and parroting of talking points. So I just want to go through this because it's still in the news. It's a huge issue right now, socially, politically, and the story in this past week was that President Obama versus Senator Warren. So President Obama was on hardball, and he said basically, a lot of the things that are being said are untrue, and that he loves Elizabeth Warren, but she's simply wrong. Now, he's not attacking Elizabeth Warren. He's just telling you the truth, folks. She is wrong. Her, Bernie Sanders, Robert Wright, I'm just extremely, extremely disappointed, a little depressed by it, as a matter of fact, that they would behave this way on this issue. And I don't know what else to say. In fact, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I don't even want to talk about TPP anymore. I don't want to even talk about the controversy anymore. But I just want to do any viewers the service of going through this explicitly, point by point, and putting this to rest, at least for TRP News, for the final time. Ultimately, I will tell you this. I believe that it's going to be a done deal. President's going to get fast-track authority. We will have TPP. I'm not saying I'm for or against, but I am saying that this opposition is just sort of lost its mind, okay? This evident, that the evidence that the opposition is misguided is clearest in the criticism, which is full of scary rhetoric and very short on facts. So they tell you the sky is falling, jobs are going overseas, they're going to ruin our environment, they're going to eliminate laws, and they never explain to you the mechanism. They never explain to you how this is all going to happen. It's just supposed to going to happen because the TPP is bad. It's bad because it's bad. Well, it's just not good enough, people. Liberals, we need to be constructive. We need to work for things, not just be like the right wing and scream no every time something we don't like happens. And on top of that, I'll tell you this, we have much more important issues to deal with in terms of minimum wage issues, income inequality, environmental concerns, fracking, water, the list goes on. And I'm telling you, Trans-Pacific Partnership on the scale of liberal concerns is about a 0.0 something, okay? It's minuscule, it's insignificant. You should not be wasting your energy on this. Let your representatives deal with it. And if you have some specific concerns, you've heard something about it, contact your representatives. Screaming and saying no is not productive, it's not helpful, and it won't serve your agenda. Okay? Now, the TPP is an agreement we have been negotiating for 10 years, so I just want to go through this rhetoric, what people are saying, and just, logically, let's analyze it together. Okay? 10 years they've been negotiating this agreement. And then we have people like Robert Wright putting out a video for Move On that purports to tell you, quote, the story of the Trans-Pacific Partnership in 2 minutes and 25 seconds. 10 years, 12 countries, and they're going to explain it in 2 minutes, 25 seconds. Okay, folks, that doesn't say to you that this doesn't add up, then, there's really no talking to you, honestly, okay? Not trying to be rude, but, come on, that doesn't make sense. You can't explain this deal, 40% of the world's GDP, in 2 minutes. It can't be done. It can't be done, okay? This week we were in the news because of the President and Senator Warren, and, the main points of criticism seem to boil down to three things. Critics claim the deal's too secret, that it will result in the loss of jobs, and is designed to benefit corporations. Okay, so I will just, final time, I want to go through these criticisms and specific claims from the loudest critics, And like I said, this is about the last time I'll go through this in depth. It's just kind of, frankly, it's a letdown. It's a little bit depressing how easily people are being manipulated on this issue, and the fact that some of our strongest leaders are basically lying, deceiving, and pandering on this issue. I'm sorry to put it so bluntly, but it's just a fact, and I'm going to go through and show you exactly why that's true. Okay? So first is secrecy. Senator Warren says we're not allowed to talk about it. Robert Reich says it's devised in secret. Okay, we're not allowed to talk about it. And then Senator Warren goes on Rachel Maddow to do what? Talk about it. Okay, so we're not allowed to talk about it. And then it's a secret, no one knows what's in it. And then Rachel Maddow asks if she's been able to read it, and the answer is yes. A simple yes, I've been able to read it. So, the negotiations are private. No, they cannot publicly disclose the negotiations, information about the negotiations. No, they cannot take aids unless they have the proper security clearance. But it's like buying a house, folks. If you have a real estate agent, your real estate agent can't go talk about your finances to the person who's selling the house. They can't go to the person selling the house and say, they might go up on their offer a little bit. It's called fiduciary responsibility. It's against the law. You could be sanctioned for it. You can actually go to jail for it. You can be fined for it. This is not something that happens. It doesn't happen when you buy a house or a car. You don't want it to happen. It doesn't happen when countries negotiate trade deals, okay? So this is nothing unusual. The negotiations are private, but however, the framework of the agreement, the outline of the agreement, the points of negotiation are all widely available. You can go to the U.S. Trade Representative website. You can see for yourself an outline of everything that's being discussed and everything that's being negotiated. They say they're not allowed to talk about it, but then how come we see them put up websites, put up petitions, send out videos, send out emails, all screaming about the Trans-Pacific Partnership? I thought you weren't supposed to talk about it. I thought you couldn't say anything about it. Yet here they are in every media conduit available doing nothing but talking about it. So this is just nonsense, okay? And what's disappointing here is that if you can go on and talk about it, and you can scream about it and say no and stop it and put an end to it, then why can't you say this is what needs to happen? This is what we need to do. This is what should be in the trade deal. Where are those conversations? Where are those comments, okay? In fact, you may be able to not talk about what's in the deal, but you can talk about things that aren't in the deal. Those aren't subject to secrecy, okay? Those aren't private. If something's not in the deal and should be, there's nothing stopping you from talking about it. Okay, so what are you saying? No trade deals ever at all? No trade at all? Close our borders? Institute 50% tariff on all imports? What's that going to do to our economy? Okay, so this secrecy thing is just way overblown. On Maddow, Senator Warren said 85%, the advisors, the people working on this trade deal, 85%, she pulls this number out of her hat, 85% senior executives and lobbyists in working groups, okay? Robert Reich says lobbyists from America's biggest corporations and banks are involved, but not the public. Okay, so first of all, not all lobbyists work for corporations, and not all corporations are profit-making ventures, okay? Many of these people are lobbyists. Many of these people are executives. And many of them are lobbyists and executives for environmental groups, for unions, for animal rights groups, and conservation groups, okay? So it's a total deception when she says that these are executives and lobbyists. Yes, because those are the people those are the people who represent interests. They represent clean water. They represent animal conservation. They represent land conservation. They represent, a host of issues. The lobbyists are not just for IBM and Monsanto, okay? So these people come from a variety of organizations. So from the U.S. Trade Representative website, okay, and this is another thing about the secrecy issue, okay? So this will tell you, this is how they operate, okay? and this is actually, they're saying it's secret, but then they're criticizing the fact that there are people who are participating in the negotiations. Okay, this makes no sense. People from the public, representatives from various organizations. So they're saying it's secret, but yet the people from the public are participating. It doesn't logically make sense. The website from the U.S. Trade Representative says, Congress established a system of advisory committees to get input from affected industries. The Obama administration has grown the size and membership of our trade advisory committees to add voices that were initially left out of the process. In doing so, we have worked to ensure strong representation from labor unions, environmental groups, faith organizations, public health and consumer advocates, consumer organizations, local and state officials, farmers, ranchers, small business, and many more diverse interests. These advisors receive full and equal access to U.S. negotiating proposals and work with our negotiators in an interactive process that includes regular updates on negotiations, the opportunity to review U.S. proposals before they are tabled, and the chance to provide meaningful input into negotiating proposals and decisions. So before we even go to negotiate, before the trade representative goes to meet with representatives from another country, they take the proposals and show them around to people, to interested parties, to people who know about various areas of interest, to unions, to corporations, yes, for-profit corporations, to environmental groups. And also, before they take the points they're going to negotiate to the negotiation, they show them to Congress. Okay, so Congress is informed before we even go to negotiate these things what we're going to be negotiating for. So here are some of the people on these advisory committees. So I just want to lay this out for you. There's something like 10 or 12 advisory committees advising the U.S. Trade Representative. This is what Elizabeth Warren is talking about. Executives and lobbyists in there making the deal, cooking the deal, getting it, making it so it's in their favor. Okay, this is just a bunch of BS. It's just so sad. I'm over this issue. Like I said, it's insignificant, and we need to be spending our time on something else. But I just been going through this point by point, and bear with me. There's like I said, 10 or 12 different advisory committees. Okay, so here's one: Advisory Committee for Trade Policy and Negotiations. These committees all have like 20, 23, 25 members. Okay. This committee, Trade Policy and Negotiations, has 23 members, and here are some of the members. Rafael Anchia from the Texas House of Representatives, Leo Gerard from the United Steelworkers, a union, Joseph Hansen from the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, James Hoffa, International Brotherhood of Teamsters, another union, Robert King, International President, United Auto Workers, a union, and Dennis Williams, also from the United Auto Workers. Okay, so strong union representation there, public representative in there, and here's another committee, Labor Advisory Committee for Trade Negotiations and Trade Policy, 23 members. Trade negotiations and trade policy, 23 members, all from unions, every single one. Okay, so labor is well represented. This is not, don't be fooled. And these are the lobbyists, 85% lobbyists that Elizabeth Warren is trying to scare you with. They're from unions. They're union lobbyists, okay? They're representing labor, the workforce. Trade and Environmental Policy Advisory Committee. Trade and Environment Policy Advisory Committee, 22 members. Kitty Block from the Humane Society, Vanessa Dick from World Wildlife Fund, Rhoda Kapatkin from Consumers Union of Consumers Reports, so Consumer Advocacy Organization, Amanda Mayhew from World Animal Protection, Glenn Prickett from the Nature Conservancy, Andrew Sharpless from Oceana, William Snape III from Endangered Species Coalition, Alexander von Bismarck from Environmental Investigation Agency, Thomas Weirick from American Council on Renewable Energy. Okay, so these are your lobbyists, these are your executives. Yes, there are also executives from Bumblebee Tuna and from various other companies, both food producers and attorneys from legal agencies involved. But I can't see how any reasonable person would say that they should be excluded from the advisory committee, that we shouldn't have some people from corporations, and we shouldn't have some people who are lawyers when it comes to negotiating a legal document. So it just doesn't make any sense, but I'm just telling you that this is not the secretive backroom corporate profit-making deal that it's being made out to be, okay? You know, on top of that, folks, guess what? These committees are open to the public, right? So you can go apply. You can become a member of one of these committees. There's ongoing recruitment for membership in these committees. They're accepting applications all the time, continuously. You can go to the trade representative website. You can send them an email. They have a link there you can click where you can get an application. You can submit the application in your resume, and you can apply to be on a committee. Anyone out there can do it. Okay, so a committee is open to the public, advised before they even go to the trade negotiations as to what the negotiations are, and they are from all areas of the public sphere, not just profit-making corporations with evil intent on the United States, okay? It's just not the case. It's just not the case. Senator Warren says that we give up now with fast-track legislation, which will give the president the authority to negotiate the deal and have a up or down vote in Congress with no amendments, with a 60-day review. She says that if that passes, we give up now any chance to amend or block the TPP. She says virtually no ability to stop it from the Senate and the House. And Senator Sanders says the TPP has no expiration date, make it virtually impossible to repeal. Okay? Huge deception, huge lie. It's not true. You know, it's taken the wind out of my sails to read this to you. You know, the Senate has the right to vote up or down. The Senate is advised before they go to negotiate any points. Okay, any negotiation, they are informed before the negotiation begins. The Senate can say no. The president can withhold submission of the TPP. The public can contact their trade representatives. Even if the TPP is passed and we don't like it, we can pass a law taking us out of the TPP. We can decide that. We can decide next week we're going to be in the TPP, and the week after we can decide not to be in it. We're the world's economic engine. We're the world's military power. That no one can tell us, no three-person tribunal can tell us we have to participate if we don't want to. You know, it's just a myth that we can't change it. There is a deadline in place, but like I told you with the Iraq nuclear negotiations, these deadlines are not laws. They're not set in stone. No, you know, they're just designed to set an endpoint, to keep pressure on the negotiations, to urge people to come to a conclusion and come to an agreement. The deadline can change. You know, the submission date can change. The length of the period could be extended. This all can be done as long as there's a political will to do it, as long as we write a law to do it, as long as someone expresses a need or a reasonable reason why something different should happen. But screaming no, the sky is falling, and you know, all hell's going to break loose is not a reasonable reason. Okay, it's just not a reason for changing what's happening. You know. As I said, the Senate has every opportunity to have objections, and the public will have an opportunity to read this. So this idea that we won't have a chance to amend or block it, frankly, is just a lie. There's nothing else to say about it. From the USTR website, also, the administration has worked closely with the people's representatives in Congress as we pursue our ambitious trade agenda. This has included previewing U.S. proposals with congressional committees before taking them to the negotiations. So that's what I was just saying. They know, they're fully informed, the representatives are fully informed. So while the negotiations are private, there's a wealth of information on the basics of the deal, and your representatives are fully informed. So, you know, half the country doesn't even vote, so I'm finding it hard to believe that so many people suddenly want to read a trade deal. I just don't believe it, okay? If you're one of those people who reads every trade deal, reads legislation, has your representatives' phone numbers, then by all means, contact them, voice your concerns, but just screaming no, the sky is falling is not constructive, and it's not going to get us anywhere as liberals, as lefties, okay? You know, if we can't get people to vote, you know, it's just the worst kind of irony to me that people are complaining about some sort of trade negotiation being private. It just doesn't make any sense. So, and for those of you who do vote, there's ample ways to express your concerns. Like I said, call your representatives. You can contact the U.S. Trade Representative. You can contact the administration. There's lots of opportunity to say what you have to say, okay? So, if that's what you need to do that's what you need to do, then please go do it. But like I said, what's going on now with the opposition is just not productive and it's not constructive. Okay, and the next thing that people are claiming is that the Trans-Pacific Partnership will lead to a loss of jobs. Okay, Bernie Sanders says that the TPP will allow corporations to outsource even more jobs overseas. He says wages, benefits, and collective bargaining will be threatened. The TPP will make the race to the bottom worse because it forces American workers to compete with desperate workers in Vietnam, where the minimum wage is just 56 cents an hour. So most of this criticism that I've seen is just based on the idea that there's no such thing as a good trade deal. This just seems to be a sentiment for a lot of people, liberals and others, that you just can't have a good trade deal. They have a bad taste in their mouth from what they perceive to be the ill effects of other trade deals, including NAFTA and trade deals with Korea, although we have trade deals with a variety of countries. So oddly, it's only a few that seem to get singled out. Warren, as a matter of fact, Senator Warren says past trade deals have not been good. And most people, like I said, point to NAFTA and Korea and make claims about thousands of jobs lost. But when you look at the facts and you look into it, it's not really supported by the facts, okay? This idea that these trade deals will cost jobs just isn't there in the numbers. I think I said last week there's more correlation, for example, the trade deficit, there's more correlation with what party controls the White House than there is with when a trade deal was signed. As a matter of fact, NAFTA is a deal that with Canada and Mexico, Bill Clinton signed in 1993. Most people consider it a disaster for American workers, or many people do, but the consensus among economists is that it did not have much effect on the labor market. And I think that's what you're going to find with the TPP. Ultimately, it's going to have very little effect on a lot of markets. It will have some effect on some markets, but it's not going to be an outsized impact by any means. Because, as I've explained to you last week, we are basically already in a free trade deal with all these countries to begin with. So it's another absurdity of this whole argument people are making against this, because we are already engaged in trade and free trade with most of these countries. So this is just a development of a new codification, a new regime, a new new standards, and as the president said, it's to raise the standards and become more progressive, to protect labor disputes, to make sure that we operate under the same rules. After NAFTA, U.S. unemployment dropped 2 points. So how is that a job loss, people? Unemployment goes from something like 7% to 5% after NAFTA. It's not a job loss. The numbers aren't there. What you're seeing is the effect of, modernization, globalization, things that are going to happen regardless. And they're all the more reason, and I've said this to people, when I'm debating this issue. You say the past trade deals are bad. We're already engaged. We already have trade deals with these countries to begin with. If past trade deals are bad, isn't that all the more reason to negotiate a new trade deal, a better trade deal? Okay? This is, and like I said, the numbers just don't show it. So these, people say companies will build over there and sell their products here, and that will cause job loss. But, companies are already moving overseas. Companies are already outsourcing. That has nothing to do with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So why do you think suddenly that this is going to, change the status quo, change what companies do? It's going to enable what companies do more efficiently, maybe, but ultimately, I guarantee you there's going to be a minimal impact on this. What it does is it smooths the trade. It makes sure we operate under the same rules. It actually exerts American influence, an American way of doing things on other countries and some developing countries. So it's actually kind of a good thing from what I see. Okay, so people say that companies are going to move over there and trade's going to they're going to sell their products here, so we're going to have a trade deficit. As I said, there seems to be no correlation to that I can see in the numbers that I've looked at from historical data going back to 1968. And you know what? America has no free trade with India, yet imports of goods from there have doubled over the past decade. Doubled. No trade agreement, okay? Imports from India doubled. We only have what is called normalized trade with China, yet imports from there continue to rise. So we just have normalized trade. We don't even really have a trade agreement or understanding with them. But yet, you all know how much Chinese products we're buying in this country, okay? People are screaming about the dangers of TPP, but I don't think they have a clear picture of the current state of global trade, and they're not giving a thought to what the alternatives are. Should we withdraw from all agreements, institute high tariffs, close our borders, not allow imports? I mean, what's that going to do to the economy? Where's the talk of the alternatives? Where's the talk of if this trade deal's bad and other trade deals are bad and the trade deal with Australia is bad and the trade deal with Europe's bad, then where's the screaming about withdrawing from those? Where's the screaming about shutting those trade deals down? If they're so horrible, where's the where's the outcry about that? So corporations have gone global a long time ago. Stopping TPP will not stop companies from moving to other countries, and it will not stop the flow of trade around the world. As President Obama said, and actually I said a week before he did, that horse has left the barn, okay? This is a done deal. This is the situation we find ourselves in. We have to work under the circumstances that we find ourselves in, not in some fantasy ideal planet that does not exist, okay? It's like if three people go into business together, equal partners, and two people end up buying a new house and one person loses a house, is that a fault of the business? Is that a fault of the partnership? Or is that a fault of the person who didn't manage their money properly? Okay? I mean, how can you say NAFTA, but yet we have a trade deficit with Canada as well as Mexico? So Canada with socialized medicine, with state-run lumber industry. Whose fault is it? It's not NAFTA's fault, okay? It's not the trade deals, people. It's the policies in this country, which is why I said at the beginning of this, this trade deal is not what we need to be focusing our energy on. This trade deal is insignificant, infinitesimal, okay? We need to be focusing on much bigger issues because this is not it. And not only that, you're being lied to about it. You're being deceived about it. You're being pandered to about it, all in the interest of gaining political capital and raising funds, okay? So finally, critics are upset that the TPP will benefit corporations. Well, people, it's a trade deal, okay? So who engages in trade? Companies and corporations, okay? So, yeah, there's going to be some benefit to corporations. A shocker. I hope you're not surprised by that. I hope you're not offended by that because corporations are a part of a fact of life in the world and in this country. So let's not confuse, as I said, there's other issues. Let's not confuse corporate control of our government with some kind of harebrained notion that corporations should not make money, okay? Corporations are what produces goods and services and where people go to get jobs, okay? So we have a structure, a society, and most of the world does, where corporations are the producers, the organizations we use to produce things, to create things, to distribute things, and where we go when we want to find employment. So the idea that corporations can't ever benefit is just some kind of crazy idea. It's really an extremist idea to begin with. This is not really. It's not really something we're supposed to be afraid of. Corporations making money. What we need to be concerned about is corporate control of our government, undue corporate influence, corporations being treated as people, CEOs getting paid thousands of times more than the workers. That's what we need to be concerned about, not whether or not corporate revenues increase. That's a sideshow, people. That's not the issue that we should be focused on. And one thing people are saying is that companies will be able to change government policy and laws through tribunals known as ISDS. You've probably been hearing a lot about that, ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement. Robert Reich says the tribunals are outside any nation's legal system. He also says it gives corporations and banks a way to eliminate regulations that get in the way of their profits. And corporations could challenge any regulation that diminishes profits. Bernie Sanders says that the TPP creates a dispute resolution process that allows corporations to challenge any domestic laws that would adversely impact their expected future profits. Okay, so just, more deception, really. They are really just exaggerating, it's hyperbole. First, ISDS is not outside the law, okay? ISDS is a form of international law. It is part of law. It's created by law. So it's not outside of laws, okay? It's outside of any nation's legal system. This is how, this tricky language he uses. It's not outside our legal system. We recognize international laws. This is part of being in the world, okay? We recognize international laws when it comes to war, when it comes to shipping and plane flights, and when it comes to trade. We recognize international law. We have international waters. We have international airspace. And these laws govern these things. International law exists, and it's something that is recognized by nations. It's not outside our laws. It's an extension of our laws. Some have objected to the nature and scope of ISDS here and in other countries, and there are concerns about the process, but I once again have to tell you I think they are overblown. Now, they say that, people have cited Australia being sued by Philip Morris for requiring plain packaging of cigarettes. Germany was sued by an energy company for scaling back its nuclear energy program, and for putting new restrictions on coal plants. So, yes, there are some concerns about this, and yes, it can affect policy, but not exactly in the way you think, okay? So, this is about money, people. This is not about corporations trying to change the laws in a country. This is about them protecting their investment. Investor-state dispute, okay? ISD, investor-state dispute. So when a company goes into Germany, invests millions of dollars in building a nuclear power plant, and then Germany says, we're not going to use that plant. That company loses money, okay? Germany just suddenly changes its mind after issuing permits that allow for the building of the plant and letting the company invest the money. Germany changes the rules. So yes, they had to pay. If you build a factory and you're going to produce widgets, and the day you open that factory, the government says, you know what, widgets are illegal. You'd want to be compensated. Okay, so yes, there's some concerns about the scope of lawsuits that are coming under investor-state dispute under these tribunals, but like I said, it's overblown, and this is about money. This is not about countries changing their laws. This is about a little bit more planning. What Fukushima happens, and Germany says, no more nuclear power. Well, that affects companies that have invested in building them plants to provide power to the country of Germany. I mean, so This is about money. This is not about companies trying to change laws. This is about them protecting their investments, which is not unreasonable. It's not something crazy. It's just, again, it's to be expected, and this is just an international mechanism that provides the opportunity for these disputes to be settled. In many countries, just like the U.S., anyone can sue anyone else at any time. So they're saying, these lawsuits are growing and, they're getting crazy. Well, trade deals are growing. Trade deals are becoming more prevalent. So it's not surprising that there will be more cases, more disputes to be settled. There are, like I said, people can sue, you can be sued for anything. So it doesn't have to be legitimate, right? I can sue you because I didn't like the way you looked at me. Doesn't mean I'm going to win, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to go to court and answer a complaint. Okay, so the tribunals provide this, mechanism, this legal mechanism for people to settle these disputes. And you know what happens anyway? These lawsuits also happen within the country. Even without ISDS, these countries can sue in the local court systems. So it doesn't mean that just because ISDS is there, that suddenly there's an opportunity to sue that wasn't there before. These companies, Australia had the plain packaging. One of the first suits they got was from it within their own country. They had to handle that one first. Okay, so this is just, again, overblown. There are concerns about the scope and about the nature, but, this is about money. This is not about changing laws, about corporations picking what laws they can, let's see if we can get this law eliminated. It's not like that, folks. It's like if you pass a law disrupting my practice and my investment and eliminating my opportunity to capitalize on my investment, then yes, I have a complaint, So, ISDS, not extra legal, not outside the law. It's something that is a part of the law. And, there are some concerns about it, of course, about the limits, about the public nature of it. Should it be more public? About how we can go about changing these policies, when it comes to investments. But it's, again, overblown. So a few more things from the sort of far out end of the spectrum of these complaints. Like I said, this is going to be the last time I go through this. Sorry for the long segment. I hope it was informative. It's basically, it's been kind of a letdown seeing some of the leadership on this. I just really, if you don't agree with me, I could be wrong. You can explain to me in the comments of the video comments or on the website and let me know what you think. But the facts just don't match the rhetoric, people. So a few more things from the far out end. Bernie Sanders says our ability to protect the environment will be undermined. Well, this goes back to the corporations changing laws through the investor-state dispute. It's just not true, as I explained. Yes, policy can be affected, but it's not the way you think. For example, Germany had to take restrictions off a power plant, but that doesn't mean that they can't restrict future power plants, okay? They can keep the restrictions on and compensate the company, but they change the rules in midstream, and that costs people money. And it's not just a corporation, quote unquote. There's people who've invested their money. There's shareholders. There's people in this corporation who invested and worked to try to make money. There's workers, employees, and and again, as I mentioned before, something called fiduciary responsibility. A corporate board has a fiduciary responsibility to the corporation. They have to protect their corporation's investments. If they don't, it's malfeasance, and they can not only be removed from the board, they could be sued. So this is not surprising. It's nothing outrageous or unusual. Bernie Sanders also says the TPP will make it easier for countries like Vietnam to export contaminated fish and seafood into the U.S. Now, this is pure nonsense. His thinking is that, well, since we'll have free trade with Vietnam, we already have minimal tariffs, number one. Since we have free trade with Vietnam, suddenly there'll be so many more fish, the USDA will be overwhelmed and not able to accurately screen the fish for, contamination like heavy metals and toxic chemicals. And, this is just kind of crazy talk, man, because number one, the USDA does what it does. He's complaining, well, we only screen 3%. Well, yeah, we only screen so much, but that's still going to be 3% even with a free trade deal, number one. Number two is we are net exporter of fish. For example, fish. Net importer. We import 3 times more fish than as it stands now than we export. Okay, so we already are, if we're at risk, we're already at risk. Okay, this has nothing to do with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay, more hyperbole, more crazy rhetoric. Bernie Sanders also says Buy America laws could come to an end. Under TPP, foreign corporations must be given equal access to compete for these government contracts with companies that make products in America. Under TPP, the U.S. could not even prevent companies that have horrible human rights records from receiving government contracts paid by U.S. taxpayers. Half true. Yes, corporate companies from other countries will be given greater access. They will be part of the free trade is that they have a level playing field. That's part of it. We have a level playing field in their country. They have a level playing field in this country. So they will be able to have an opportunity to bid on government contracts. The human rights violation thing, he says they'll reward countries like Vietnam with terrible human rights records. And even if you have a terrible human rights records and you're violating human rights, we have no choice but to accept your contract. No, it's just not true. It's just not true. One of the conditions of TPP involves labor conditions, labor disputes, also a level playing field. It means a level playing fields here as well as over there. So if Vietnam's using slave labor, well, that's not within the spirit of the free trade agreement. Okay. Number two, we aren't required to buy anything from anyone. That's not what free trade is. We have to give them a level playing field. We don't have to buy from them. And if they want to take us to a tribunal over this, how many people who we don't want to buy from? If we don't want to buy from them because of human rights violations, what country is going to want to have their human rights violations become a matter of international law public record? Okay, so this is it's just more hyperbole, more rhetoric. It's just, nonsense. Yes, they will be able to compete for government contracts. No, we aren't required to buy from anyone with having human rights violations. He also says prescription drug prices will increase, access to life-saving drugs will decrease, and profits of drug companies will go up. Big pharmaceutical companies are working hard to ensure that TPP extends the monopolies they have for prescription drugs by extending their patients. Okay, well, true. A little bit of hyperbole there, but for the most part, it's actually true. This is about intellectual property. That's what you hear, IP, intellectual property laws. They want to extend their patent. If I have a patent for a drug, a cancer drug or a cholesterol drug or whatever it is, and it's currently, say, 20 years, then 20 years runs out in these other countries, and you see these people selling drugs from overseas, pharmaceuticals from overseas, and sometimes they're a lot cheaper than they are here. And so what these pharmaceutical companies want is an extension on that patent, at least according to Bernie Sanders. So say 30 years or 40 years, before anyone can make a generic drug, before anyone can start undercutting their market. So yes, prices, I guess it's half true because prices won't go up, they just won't go down as fast. Okay, so it's not really prices go up, prices just don't go down as fast because generic drugs will not be available, versions of drugs will not be available as soon. Drugs won't become less available, they just won't become as widely available as quickly. This is just, so much to parse, but you get the point. Yes, these people who invested millions and millions of dollars in developing a drug want to protect their intellectual property. Another shocker there. Again, let's not focus on the sideshow. Let's focus on what's really important. And this is not a trade deal, a Trans-Pacific Partnership issue. This is a patent law issue and a health care issue is what it is. So instead of screaming about these guys, well, I'm getting irate. Instead of screaming about these guys actually protecting the property that they created, let's scream about people not having access to life-saving health care. Let's scream about the patent law system that has gotten out of control. Let's scream about that, not the sideshow. Not just because we hate corporations and corporations should never get any benefit, which is just crazy, ridiculous, stupid talk, okay? Let's get over that. Let's talk about how our society should run, the benefits that members of our society should have, not talk about, we can't ever let anybody, a certain class of people win. That's just an inverse of the right wing, people. That's just like, saying black people can't win just because they're black. Corporations can't win just because they're profit-making entities. That's not legitimate criticism. We need to be talking about what happens, what should happen, the way things should work, and this is just a sideshow, this intellectual property deal. And Sanders says Wall Street would benefit at the expense of everyone else. Under TPP, governments would be barred from imposing capital controls that have been successfully used to avoid financial crises. These controls range from establishing a financial speculation tax to limiting the massive flows of speculative capital flowing into and out of countries responsible for the Asian financial crisis in the 1990s. In other words, TPP would expand the rights and power of the same Wall Street firms that nearly destroyed the world economy just 5 years ago and would create conditions for more financial instability in the future. More hyperbole, more overblown rhetoric. In one sense, it is true there will be a leveled playing field. The flow of capital might become a little less inhibited when it comes to certain countries, and investment may be made a little bit easier. So yes, Wall Street may benefit from this. However, the reason that the flip side that they're not telling you, again, it's a sideshow, okay? It's a sideshow. First of all, capital's flowing no matter what we do, right? He talks about instituting a tax. Well, we can institute a tax. We need to have Wall Street reform, derivative reform, capital requirements. But capital controls, what he's talking about is the flow of money and controlling the supply of money. Okay, well, like I said, the flip side that he's not telling you is that the reason that no one wants to do that is because that has been key to maintaining economic stability in a variety of countries. All right? Controlling the supply of money, yes, it was key to averting crisis in Asia, or it's key to us coming out of the worst recession since the Great Depression. Controlling and manipulating the supply of money is crucial to that, right? So the problem is, once you start telling other countries what they can do, and once they say, well, if you were going to do this, then you're going to do that, then you actually limit everybody's chance to manipulate their currency. They're talking, everyone's saying currency manipulation. Well, since the freaking Great Recession, what do you think we've been doing for the last 10 years? We have been manipulating our currency like crazy, people. Okay, and that's why these capital controls. No one wants to do too much with this because it could end up shooting us in the foot. It can end up working against us. It can end up actually inhibiting our ability to deal with financial crisis and destabilization of the economy. And currently, the United States has bilateral investment treaties in force with 40 countries and free trade agreements with investment chapters in force in 17 countries. So these controls limit, these treaties limit the controls on currency and capital. So we already are, have our toe in the water on this, but we're trying to even this out. As I said, if these past trade deals are so bad, then let's negotiate a better one, okay? This is a work in progress. Globalization and modernization is something that's an ever-evolving thing, and nobody wants to put in rules in place that are going to end up working against us. So a lot of what is happening under a lot of what people are complaining about in the Trans-Pacific Partnership is already happening. We already are in free trade agreements with most of these countries and limited tariffs with the rest. We already have trade agreements around the world, multiple agreements. We already participate in ISDS, investor-state dispute. We already recognize it, So a lot of this stuff is already happening, and a lot of this rhetoric is just not, flat out not true, okay? And like I said before, there's nothing stopping you from contacting the U.S. Trade Representative, contacting the administration, contacting your congressional representatives. There's nothing stopping you from applying to be on one of the advisory committees, So there's nothing stopping you from reviewing the information on the Trade Representative website and during the review period when it's finally submitted. So it's not secret. There's no evidence it's going to cost jobs, and corporations may benefit, but not as much as you think, and that's what trade is about, the benefit of business. So shocker there, and hey, what are you going to do? Okay, finally this week, just a story out of St. Louis County, Missouri. I just wanted to tell you about something unusual. The strange tale of an election in Kinloch, Missouri. Kinloch is a town in St. Louis County, Missouri, with a population of less than 300 people. And following an election, incoming Mayor Betty McCrae arrived at City Hall last Thursday and was prevented from entering by police and the city attorney. City Attorney James Robinson said the Board of Aldermen voted to suspend McCrae on Monday, that Monday of last week. The city has raised concerns to the St. Louis County Board of Elections and the Missouri Secretary of State about people being registered to vote in Kinloch who no longer live there. So they have voted on impeaching the mayor there, the newly elected mayor, for suspected voter fraud, apparently, even though the election was certified as legitimate. And the election director sent canvassers to verify that voters were registered at the correct addresses, but so far he's declined to say what the canvassers found at the addresses. So no word on how a mayor can be impeached for an election that was certified or prevented from entering a public building for something where there seems to be no evidence of conspiracy or collusion. It's being reported that McCrae has hired an attorney and will fight the impeachment. So we'll let you know how that turns out, and we'll keep you posted. And finally today, I just want to send a shout out to Jenny, whose birthday was this past week. I just want to wish you a happy birthday. Thanks for watching, and I wish you many happy returns. All right, and that's it for TRP News. I want to thank you for watching. Apparently we had some focus issues, so hopefully we got those cleared up for the very end of the segment. Sorry about that. I still hope you found it useful. And hey, it's the struggle is real. So we'll be back next week, and we'll have a little more polish on our production. And I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm James Andre. Have a great week.